Hello, and welcome to Hold This Thought, a podcast where I invite you to hold on to thoughts that you might not have had before. Each week, I sit across from a new guest, and we talk life, ideas, and ponder the questions that make us think twice. I hope you enjoy the show.
It's like a cross between celery, broccoli, and cucumber. And that might not sound good, but it's actually really good. And it's like crispy. So yeah.
Is it genetically made that way, like when it was in the growing phase?
Genetically.
Like when you say it's a cross between, you're saying it's similar to them, or you're saying it was engineered
similar.
The way cotton candy grapes are engineered, like they're not naturally occurring in nature.
It is naturally occurring, but naturally, that's how I would describe the taste. A combo, and like the texture. It's like a combo of all those things. Yeah.
Gotcha. So you're saying it's like those. I cannot get this moon.
Is it supposed to say, is it a light?
It's light, and it's supposed to...
It floats?
It floats. It's magnetic. Or magic-etic. A child would think it's magic.
Oh, that's a little wild.
It's magic. Whoa.
Oh, and it changes colors. That's intense. Is it going to rotate this whole time?
It will always rotate if
Okay.
you spin it, as long as the power doesn't go out, or you don't bump it with your arm.
All right.
Like I did.
That's pretty intense. That's AI.
Do you think the moon landing was real?
Oh, man. Look, if you ask my brother-in-law, he would actually say no. If you ask me, I don't know if I care. So.
In your opinion, why is caring or not caring irrelevant?
I think, well, okay, I'll say this. I think, not that I don't care, but whether it happened or not doesn't really affect my day-to-day. I think all these controversies and conspiracies, they're probably very valid. Just based on our history, probably very valid things, but it doesn't affect my day-to-day. And maybe it should affect my day-to-day, but I have other things to care about and worry about. And so it's not something that I will take a deep dive in, because I think you can it's a slippery slope, I think, to deep dive into things like that. And then you realize that you're maybe a little crazy.
I found myself in this trap late 2025 where I was getting a lot of conspiratorial content on my algorithms, mostly Instagram, and sending it to family. It's like doctors who've like been disbarred and like all these things, like, you know, Dr. Barbara O'Neill is always tucked in there somewhere. And I love her content, but her plus other of her contemporaries sharing not mainstream information and opinions and rhetoric around health, around pharmaceuticals, around the food we eat, around vaccines. I mean, like all the controversial things, right? And my brother told me, since we're talking about siblings, my brother told me, he's like, yeah, I don't get my medical advice from social media. And that triggered me in that moment. But as I've reflected on that months later, that's actually a really good position to hold.
Yeah.
In my head, it's like, no, these are like disbarred doctors. Like these are valid people. These are peer-reviewed papers that are like been buried by the institution or the government or the elite or whatever, and they're being resurfaced, and now they're like breaking out through podcasts or breaking out through these like lesser known non-mainstream media sources. Yeah. And we need to know this information. A lot of that stuff might be true, but the point that he made is actually pretty sound advice. I don't get my medical advice through social media is probably a good standard for how to like live life.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to say, so this actually happened to me with COVID, actually. So one of my my family members, they had very strong opinions and thoughts and views about a lot of things. And Ben and I, my husband, we have thoughts and opinions, but it's not so strong that we're going to disown you if you don't agree with us, if that makes sense. So I remember that her and we were going back and forth, toe to toe, sending, whatever evidence we could find about stuff. And I remember it got to the point where I was like up late at night looking at like just everything I could find. 'Cause I'm like, I have to prove her wrong, or I have to show her like that this is not as like crazy as you think it may be, or, whatever. And I remember I was just up so late. I was like sneaking behind Ben. Like, I don't want him to know that I'm up at like 2:00 in the morning, like on the internet trying to find all this information.
Researching articles and like.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. And I literally was like, I am losing my, like it was 2 nights straight of that. And I literally felt like I was losing my mind. And it was reminiscent of, we actually did have a friend who did go crazy in the context of doing all this research. And he ended up having to go to some rehab, I can't remember, for like a little while, and then got better and he was fine. But I remembered that as I was going through that process, and I was like, I'm going to stop this right now. I had to tell my sister, I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. Sorry, I love you, but
it's not worth it.
I'm not having this conversation anymore. I'm just going to move on and let it be, whatever it is. Just, it's fine.
I think part of the allure of the social media health advice or vaccine information or even political stuff, it's not always pharma and medicine related.
Yeah.
The allure of it is controversial. They being the mystery algorithm.
It's always they.
They, yeah, right? It's like, who is they? They want you to send it to your family member. They want you to send it to your family group text or your best friend group text. They know it'll get somebody riled up.
Yeah.
It's like the old adage of like the one uncle who talks about politics at the Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner and how that's like a problem. This is like the 21st century version of that. Like It's not just isolated to that one time a year when you see your family members. It's now always on our phones, always coming to us. And so I think I think whoever they is, they use it in a way to like stir up emotion and create a infighting and feuding between family members, between friends, between colleagues, between people that belong to the same community or same church, community, religious organization. Not saying every single thing you see on Instagram or YouTube Shorts, or TikTok is like meant to like break your relationships apart. But there's a portion of it that's like meant to be divisive.
Yeah, absolutely.
No matter what the topic is. And if you're not careful, it can sweep you off your feet.
Absolutely. Yeah, there is one way that I can actually protect myself from it a little bit. So when anybody, and it's typically my family members, but if they send me a video, I know that I shouldn't watch it if, when like you're on the iPhone, I don't know what it's like for Android phones. That's not a knock to anybody who has Android, but
yeah, it is. Android's the worst.
For iPhone, when you get a message and let's say it's a YouTube video, you can kind of see like the whatever that frame is,
like the preview,
the preview, like that shot. And if it has a whole bunch of like capital bold letters and like colorful, and somebody looks like they're shouting at somebody, and that's still, I don't watch it.
Yeah,
that's how I know this is conspiracy. I'm not going to watch it today.
It's funny you say that. I don't do the shouting and the bold colors, but I do the bold letters on my podcast thumbnails. So when this airs, there'll be a picture of you. Usually I try to find a smiling photo, and it'll be of you smiling, and then it'll be something like a summarized point from the conversation, which I find that hard to do sometimes because in these conversations we talk about so many different things.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you summarize that into one item? And I found, quick tangent, YouTube allows A/B testing, which means you can say, YouTube test this A title, which is like vaccines and why they're bad with Taylor Hayes. And then you could do option number B, why I love baking. And you can send them both out into the algorithm, and then it'll give you like a feedback on like which one gets more clicks. And it's called like A/B testing to see like, and then you can also, not just the title of the video, but then the thumbnail, I'll take the same picture of you smiling, and then I'll do vax bad ? On one, like as a question, and then this one I would be like why I love baking or something. And so you can kind of test two different thoughts that both represent something that was talked about in the episode, but you can also test two different audiences because it will naturally, the algorithm will push it to two different viewership types. And so I've been running those A/B tests, and I just started, so I don't have a lot of feedback on it, but I'm interested to see how it goes. When I first started doing the show, I was just doing one title, and then I'm like, it's so hard to summarize what we talk about into one topic. And so I decided to start doing that because it helps me feel like I'm representing more to more audiences and to fair to you, fair to me, like what we actually talked about, instead of trying to, it's hard to encapsulate like a 2-hour conversation into one thought.
So it's not multiple videos. It's just, I guess, the initial display of the video.
Yeah, same exact video, but the title and the image is, well, the image is the same. It's you smiling, right? But then the words of the on the thumbnail, that you called it a still. It's called a thumbnail. The words on the thumbnail are different based on the type of audience I'm trying to, like, I don't even want to say market to, but how the type of audience, I guess I'm testing the type of content to. I mean, it's the same content within the video, but you know, the branding, that's the best way to say it. The label, the package, the wrapper that it's in is different.
Okay.
I want to ask you a semi-personal question.
Okay.
Can I ask you?
I'm here.
Okay. What is your stance on vaccinations in children?
Wow.
As a medical professional,
Yeah.
with 29 letters following their name, can you like, I guess maybe you have a broad medical background and expertise.
Yes.
I guess do that first for like 10 seconds, and then you can give me your answer on vaccines.
Okay, I can do that. So you want me to actually like go through the letters or just say like, this is who I am and this is what I do?
You can just do that part.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll hit the letters later.
Love it. Okay, so I was initially, as a healthcare provider, I was an athletic trainer. So that's where the ATC comes from, Certified Athletic Trainer. After a couple of years of doing that, I got my master's degree in physician assistant and public health. And so that's where the rest of my 20 letters comes from.
Yeah.
So that's my background in general. So I guess I'm a reputable source. Maybe not. I'm still kind of young in this. But my viewpoint on vaccines, that is such a great question, because though I am a medical provider, I am also a parent, and I'm also just an intellectual being, and I have questions about a lot of things. My husband probably hates it, but like I'm always like, what do you think about this? And what about that? And that's, my thoughts are maybe a little bit more, not bias is not the right word. They're maybe a little bit more, I might be trying to like get him to think what I'm thinking without really being considerate of what he thinks about. But all that to say, I think that there is use for vaccines. I think that there are very good reasons for vaccines. And we can see that when you look at not only in the United States, but just across the world, of how, you know, certain diseases have been completely eradicated or close to eradicated because of the work of vaccines. And it's great things, right? You know, we're saving lives, and I love that. I also feel like there is a lack of transparency in the healthcare world, where we kind of have this very paternalistic viewpoint of, you know, do what I say. This is the science. This works. This is good. Do what I say. And there's not enough conversation. There's not enough consideration of how someone may feel regarding all of those things. And people have very valid questions of, you know, is this safe? Does this, you know, could this potentially lead to this? And I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I am not, you know, someone with a PhD who's been doing this for 50 years and all the research. I have no idea. But I do think I think it's a different story when you have children and you do start to ask questions of like, okay, like I see why you're concerned. And instead of me saying, well, you just need to do it, like, let's actually have a conversation about this so that I can understand your feelings, you can understand my feelings. And not that we have to agree. That's not the point, but it's just to be respectful and kind of take it from there. So I probably didn't answer your question at all. But I think at the end of the day, I feel like most people can make an informed decision about what they want to do and how they want to do things for their children. So just to give a practical example, one of my family members had asked us like, hey, like, did you do these vaccines? Which ones would you recommend? And we had a very honest, open conversation about it. But I said at the end of the day, like, do your research. If there's anything you have a question about, if you're confused about anything, I'm happy to explain it to the best of my ability. And then take it from there. If you find that you want to proceed, great. If you don't, great. Like, I am not here to tell you what to do with your child unless you're like putting them in complete, you know, danger. But, you know, we are able to make decisions that we feel are best for our family. And I respect that.
I agree with what you said. It is a mixed bag. It's probably not fair to say all vaccines are bad and are propaganda or whatever the arguments are. But it's also probably not fair to say, yeah, we need 51 vaccines before the age of 5. There's probably, like you said, somewhere where we should be asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we need 51 times the needle goes into a child before they go to school?
Mm-hmm.
And it might be plus or minus 10, but still, it's over 30.
It's a lot.
It's over 30.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that it'll end up in your algorithm somehow. You'll
Always.
send it to family, and then the infighting and the feuding can definitely spiral out of control.
Yeah.
But you touch on something that makes a lot of sense, is that it almost feels like we're not allowed to ask questions. We're not, it's as if the entire world has accepted a certain way of this is the right way. And if you differ from that, or if you have opposing viewpoints or even opposing questions, the intention is to be, the intention that seems to come off sometimes subtly, sometimes more overt, is be quiet, get in line, get your shots.
Yeah.
Like, why are you challenging vaccines? So what if we're not regulated? Like, and maybe there's some regulation, but I've seen something that, again, this is what the naysayers would say is the social media propaganda infecting my mind and poisoning me. But
Yeah.
I've seen something where it was talking about how, I think it was a politician or someone who was like a disbarred doctor or something in that arena, where they were commenting and saying that vaccinations are the one thing that's either it's not regulated or you cannot file a lawsuit against the company that creates a vaccine if there's a negative impact. Something to that effect. It's been several months since the vaccines was in my algorithm.
Yeah.
But like late 2025, right? So, but I think you hit it on the head when it said we should do our research, we should ask questions, and we should not maybe fall to either extreme. We should find something in the middle, and there should be an openness for the populace to inquire and to make a decision for themselves and for their own families.
Yeah. Well, I find that I feel like even in my own world that I am made to feel like I have to fall in line. So where I work, it's a very, we are a very public health friendly institution. We are a very, very big on research, grants, all of these things, all of this innovation to impact public health, to impact patient care. And it's wonderful, wonderful things that we're doing in the community. And that's, being disseminated broadly. It's phenomenal things. But I have found in the couple years that I've been practicing is that people assume that because I am, for various reasons, people assume that I think a certain way. And in my mind, I'm like, you don't know. You have no idea how I feel or how I think. So for example, with me being a Black woman, there is an assumption that, I am affiliated with, a certain political party, for example, or that I have, because I work in this particular specialty, that I agree with this, medical research, or I agree with this, standard of care. And that is probably the most challenging thing of being a healthcare provider in this modern world, is that not so much that I disagree, but I just, like I said earlier, I just have questions. Not necessarily concerns, but I do have questions that I feel like are valid. And I don't think it's safe to assume that because I work here or because I work in this particular specialty that I agree with you 100% on all the political and social and cultural aspects of medicine.
I think you touch on a good point as well with the racial profiling that can happen in all parts of our society. Like if a person takes their image and their perception of a specific race or people group from social media alone, it is very likely that they will think all white people are rednecks that live in trailers and all Black people are ghetto people who live in hoods. And that's just not true.
Yes.
That's not true. That is a gross misrepresentation.
Absolutely.
Because of something that gets a viral push because it's entertaining or it's controversial or it's whatever. And those are just two races. America is full of all sorts of diverse
all of these things,
people,
right? But even, race is a social construct. Like it's actually not real. There's no validity to it. It's all socially made, and as we see the downstream effects of that. But I kind of laughed when you said redneck, because I grew up in West Virginia, so I grew up in a very
coal miners.
Yes. And very kind of homogenous population. I was maybe one of, in my elementary school, it was me and like 2 other Black kids. The rest of the population was white. So it was very like just not really that diverse. And so that, it's just an interesting kind of dynamic when like you kind of just grew up in that environment of Black and white, when the reality is like there's so much more color to the world. But when I grew up, like that's all I knew was Black and white, because it was just kind of ingrained in that cultural setting of like, oh, this is good, this is bad. And I've seen kind of trickles of that throughout my life. And I don't think those things are intentional. I think it's just, again, it's just this social construct that is just so deeply ingrained in our American society that you can't really get away from it. It's just a part of who we are. And it's more so being, I guess, conscious of how that does impact the way that you view people, how you interact with people, how you think about yourself. It affects everything. So to assume, I hate when people say that I don't see color, because like, but you do. Like, you have eyes, unless you're blind. You see color.
Most blind people still have eyes. They just can't see out of them.
Right. So like,
no disrespect to them, of course.
Absolutely not. But like you do see color. I understand what they're saying. I understand their intent is that, they are trying to be, conscious of their biases. They're trying to, be honoring, be respectful, all those things. But like, you do see color. And the reality is that we do have biases that impact the way that we view people and the way that we think. And it's hard to get out of that.
I think you bring up a good point in that you were like one of 2 or 3 in your class in West Virginia, which is probably the same for the Black person who grows up in Montana or in Wyoming. Like they're 1, 2, or 3 in their school.
Yeah.
And I think it represents something that is probably captured in how social media portrays our world, which is, not entirely true, but statistically and majority versus majority wise, there are far more Black people living in cities, surrounding suburbs, and inner cities in the U.S. than in rural farmland ranch areas. And conversely, there are far more white people living in rural farm ranch, not like wealthy major landowners, like equally as impoverished, equally poor, minimum wage, below the poverty line than there are in any inner city areas. And there are wealthy Black people, there are wealthy white people.
Right.
But when you're looking at like the socioeconomic position just by itself, and then you look at those 2 races, the people who are below the poverty line in the inner city are majoritively Black, and the people who are in rural, below the, on food stamps as well, but living out in the country somewhere are majoritively white. And so when you have these, and the reason I make that point is that when you have these videos that go viral online of like a redneck trailer park brawl, right? And it's like, look at those rednecks fighting or whatever. And then you see like the video of like a Black people fighting in like what looks like a ghetto or whatever. The algorithm is pushing and making something viral that they think that people will find entertaining. But what it's capturing is you have physically more people holding phones that belong to that group in that area. There are white people who are below the poverty line in major cities. There are Black people who are below the poverty line in rural areas. But you have statistically more people holding phones, capturing whatever they're seeing in their life that would go viral. And so to my original point from like 10 minutes ago, no, it doesn't represent the way the world is and the way that people are based on their skin color.
Yeah.
It's a very false representation. Or it's not fair to classify an entire people group or ethnicity based on 1 viral video or 10 viral videos. But the comment I'm really trying to make is that the reason those videos go viral is because they have a statistical higher probability of being filmed and recorded, showing that action taking place in that environment, compared to the inverse or the opposite.
Well, I think even a step beyond that, you also have to remember that the things that we see on social media, the things that go viral on social media, the things that our news outlets, share with us, it's what they share. There's so many things that we have, that we're not privy to at all. As you were saying that, it made me think of, so question for you. Did you know that there was a shooting at the CDC maybe sometime last year?
I don't recall that.
Okay.
Was it in the news?
Not really. But there was a shooting at the CDC last year. I don't even think I was at work that day. I don't know where I was. I think I was out of town. Yes, I was out of town.
How far do you work from the CDC?
My office is right next door to the CDC. So yeah, I was out of town and just happened to, because we get alerts. So if there's, a threat on campus of some sort, we get an alert on our phone and email so that people can take cover if need be. And basically what happened was that a person, I'm going to butcher this because I tried not to look too much into it, again, because of the algorithms and all the things, trying to protect my mind the best that I can. But basically, someone felt that it was about vaccines, and they were kind of, protesting regarding kind of vaccine harm and other things and conspiracies and lies and whatever it may be. But they shot at multiple shots at the CDC. A police officer came and responded. He ended up getting shot and actually died on campus. At the CDC, outside of the CDC gates, I guess. And I actually can't remember. I think the perpetrator did die. I think he either committed suicide or he got shot and killed. Don't remember. But all that to say, it was troubling primarily because it was not talked about in the news much at all. And I think it was just more so the framing behind it. It was someone who this is in the context of, the CDC being defunded and a lot of people losing their jobs from a public health standpoint, just with the change of the administration. And this person, enacting gun violence essentially on a government building. Related to vaccines. It's all these pieces, it's both sides of the political agenda, right? It's gun violence, it's vaccine harm, whether or not you think that's real, it's public health, and, do you feel like that's even necessary? It's on both sides of that liberal and conservative side, and it wasn't talked about at all. And for me, being an educator, being a medical provider, I don't know, I think it's unfortunate that certain things make the press and certain things don't. And I personally believe that didn't make the press just because it would have been against certain political agendas. If something like that really went viral and made the press, I think that, and not to say that it would have changed laws or anything, I don't know, but I think it would have been frowned upon in certain ways that maybe would not have, boded well for our current administration. So
what ethnicity was the shooter? Do you remember from the article?
I don't remember.
Okay. A lot of times I asked because a lot of times the ethnicity of the perpetrator will cause a viral push or a suppression, and it oftentimes depends on who's the administration that's in the office, the Oval Office, on how that will go one way or the other.
Yes.
So I was just curious if you had remembered.
Yeah, I can't remember. I do remember the police officer was a Black police officer. And actually, so one of my classmates, because it was across the street from Emory's campus, essentially. CDC is right there. And so when he got shot, he was taken to the Emory emergency room. And one of my classmates actually was one of the first people, her and a cardiothoracic surgeon were one of the first people in the emergency room trying to revive him, in the emergency room. And again, he passed away, but she was very traumatized by that, understandably. And there's just a lot of, fear. It's so close to home, I think. And I think that's the one danger of kind of all these, whether you think it's a conspiracy or not, but like all these conversations and I think the distrust, I'll say that, the distrust toward the medical community, I think to some degree there is some validity behind it just because there's the lack of transparency that I talked about before. We're not really willing to have conversations and allow people to ask questions. And that is brewing this significant distrust to the point where, now healthcare providers are, are being harmed because of all the stuff that is brewing. And to some degree, I feel like it doesn't have to be that way if we would just open up the floor to have a conversation about all of these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You make a good point. When we allow for dialogue to take place, it has the potential to keep at bay some of the more extreme versions of sharing my opinion.
Yeah.
Taking a gun to a government building and shooting at it is an extreme way to share my opinion with the world about how I feel about an administration, vaccines, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But if there is a openness to talk about our thoughts, and there is to a degree, we have freedom of speech. We can share our political opinions online or in person when live forums or amongst friends or whatever. And even in college and in high school growing up, you're allowed to debate and speak freely compared to maybe like a communism or a communist or like a socialist regime or dictatorship where you are suppressed from having unique or individualized thought. But there is almost like a soft suppression, right? You're allowed to not like vaccines, as an example, but there's still like a soft suppression, like you should like vaccines. I'm not going to make you like them. I being the federal government or the CDC or
you
whoever.
are the they.
Yeah, I'm the they. I'm speaking from the position of the they in this moment. I'm not going to force you to vaccinate your child, but you should probably vaccinate your child.
Yeah.
I'm not going to force you to vote this way or vote that way, but you should probably vote this way or vote that way, depending on whatever cycle it is when it comes to elections. I do want to circle back on the thing you mentioned with trauma and your classmate who went through that because of the gun violence. They were taking care of, that officer who ended up losing his life. You have experienced your own level of trauma as a practicing healthcare provider. Tell me about that. What's that been like going through that and seeing that firsthand?
Yeah. So the journey to where I ended up in terms of clinical care is very interesting. So before I went to PA school, I actually worked in a very underserved community as an athletic trainer. And so my high school athletes, they were impoverished. Many of them were homeless. Many of them dealt with violence in a lot of different ways, food insecurity. So there was a lot of things that they were dealing with that I realized I had absolutely no control over and no way to fix it. And so that's actually how I got very invested in public health. And that's why I decided to pursue a career in public health and what I thought was going to be public health and primary care. Because I wanted to be in the community. I wanted to work in nonprofits. I was very heavy service. I want to serve the community however I can. But as I went through school, I actually realized that I didn't like the primary care route as much. It was just slower. It wasn't as cool as I thought it was going to be. And so I got to, that was my very first rotation was primary care. My second rotation was internal medicine at Grady Memorial Hospital. And I had so much fun. Just the patient population, the demographics, the severity of disease that I saw. It was just the teams that I worked with. It was phenomenal. It was a wonderful learning experience. And so all that to say, I pivoted from being kind of a more outpatient primary care focus to I want to do some really serious internal inpatient internal medicine, essentially. And so as I was kind of going through my rotations, did some work with immunocompromised patient populations. So basically that means people who don't really have a working immune system. And so they're more likely to, develop cancers and infections, have a lot of, comorbid conditions and just have issues. And
like Crohn's disease would be an example, right? Or am I misremembering?
So it would be more, so let's say that I am immunocompromised would be someone who maybe someone who is living with HIV, someone who has a blood cancer like leukemia, someone who maybe has a organ transplant like a heart or a lung. So those are people that you would consider as immunocompromised. So
I might have been thinking of autoimmune disease.
Yes.
That's what I was thinking
Yes.
of. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And to some degree just because of the autoimmunity that can cause some immunocompromised state. It's primarily from the medications that you have to take to kind of suppress your immune system. You're suppressing the immune system so that you're not attacking your body in cells anymore. So it's a combination of all those things. But long story short, once I got to kind of the end of my school time, I decided to pursue a career in transplant infectious diseases. And so it's a wonderful hodgepodge of internal medicine coupled with working in those immunocompromised patient populations, coupled with a little bit of an infection on top of that. So it's like 3 specialties in one. But the trauma with that is, I work at a tertiary care center. And it's highly specialized. We get the sickest of the sickest patients because we can provide the highest quality care. And so I would have patients who were on the floor, so that means that they were stable. And then I would have patients in the ICU, and they weren't stable. They were on all these machines and all these medications and all these things. And whether it didn't matter whether they were on the floor or if they were in the ICU, they were still the sickest of the sick because that population, they're just so unique and they're so complex. And just the amount of suffering that I saw in those patients really made me kind of, I don't want to say I was jaded, but I think it really made me kind of reevaluate healthcare and like how we deliver care and why we deliver care the way that we do. There was a heavy emphasis on more medications and more life-preserving measures, when in reality, what that person probably needed was a conversation about end of life and really focusing more on comfort and quality of life rather than trying to extend your life. That was just going to be more suffering to that patient, to their family. And I don't know, there were just a lot of things that I wouldn't say I didn't agree with, but I definitely found myself when I was working with patients just wanting to inform them like, hey, you don't actually have to go down this very aggressive route of care. Because I developed really great relationships with my family, or not my family, with my patients and their family members. And so they would have kind of side conversations with me of like, what do you think about this? What would you do? And they were asking those questions because they were unsure. And a lot of that just had to do with just the mix of emotion. Your family member's sick, they're dying, right? So you can't even think straight. On top of that, there was some degree of, lack of health literacy and just not really understanding the healthcare system, not really understanding how all this stuff works. But then the other part of it was just genuinely, it was kind of that inner feeling of, I don't want to do this anymore, but all I know is life. Like I know nothing else beyond life. And everyone around me is working so hard to keep me alive. And so I need to keep fighting for life. But it's okay. And it's a natural part of our world to die, essentially. And I would never like push my patients toward that at all. But like I would just leave the conversation open that if they wanted to talk to me about something, like, let's talk about it. You ended up back in the hospital, not because your medications didn't work, but because you stopped taking your medications purposely. Why? Tell me why. And I actually had a patient tell me that. She had been in and out of the hospital for over the course of a year, and to the point where she was a frequent flyer. And her team, it just got to the point where her team would just text me like, such and such is here. Like they wouldn't give me any context. Like they would just say such and such is here. And that would just be my key. Like, all right, let me go see that person. Let me go take care of them and do what I need to do. And she straight up told me after I had worked so hard to like get her home and like get her the medication she needed, she straight up told me maybe her first or second day in the hospital after I kept probing her a little bit of what's really going on. She was like, to be honest with you, I stopped. I haven't been taking this medication in weeks. That's what brought her back in the hospital. But she did that because she didn't want to keep fighting anymore. And I think it's okay when people do get to that place of, I don't want to fight anymore. What can I do to have more comfort and quality in my life? Even if that means I only live for another couple days, another couple weeks, I don't know what that is. But we should, I think, prioritize that part of healthcare more than we do. And that is where that suffering came from, me seeing people who I felt like we needed to have more candid conversations about your end of life because it is imminent. And again, the timing behind that, I don't know, but like we do need to have these conversations so that we don't end up in a place where you are suddenly, you can't speak for yourself. You can't fight for yourself anymore. Your family members don't really know what you desire either, right? And so it's more so giving my patients a voice before they no longer have the ability to kind of express themselves anymore.
No, thank you for sharing that. It just, for me, it ties back into what I was sharing earlier about, not to make everything go back to vaccines, but with vaccines, right? They're like, we're not going to make you take a vaccine, but you need to take a vaccine. We're not going to make you stay alive, but you need to take your medicine, be on these machines. And it's a soft, not oppression, because it is good to promote life and life-saving healthcare. But what you shared is a unique perspective on healthcare, because the majority of the world and the majority of providers and healthcare systems are focused on how do we keep this person alive longer. And oftentimes, maybe not oftentimes, but maybe sometimes, the best course of action would be how can we increase their quality of life? And sometimes those two things will be competing. The classic example is chemotherapy with a cancer patient. Chemotherapy can increase the length of time a person stays alive, but it will drastically reduce their quality of life because of how difficult it is on the person's body. There should be more openness around the conversation of being able to choose that. And I know patients do get to choose that. They do get to choose their healthcare choices, but there shouldn't be a maybe as strong as a jadedness or a predisposition towards you must go through this 9 out of 10 uncomfortable, disastrous treatment plan for your body.
Yeah.
If you don't want to.
Yeah. And I will say, so like oncology, for example, since you brought it up, like the oncologists, at my institution, I think they overall do a very good job of saying like, hey, this is where we are. You might be here on the spectrum, or you might be here. Let's have a real conversation about this. And so I think for the most part, healthcare providers, depending on your specialty, are well equipped to have those challenging conversations and kind of guide patients in a manner that the patient can actually make a conscious decision and feel confident and good about it, even if it means death. Like I am okay with this. I'm at peace with this. But I think even still the challenge with all of that is that, at least in America, like we spend the most money on end-of-life care out of, so many nations. We spend a ridiculous amount on end-of-life care, and not saying it's not good, because I have in plenty of instances seen people on full life support and they get out of the hospital and it's great. It's such a joy because they get to go home to their families. They get to go back to the lives that they were living, and it's such a blessing to be able to see that. But the most challenging part about my job was that I was strictly inpatient. So I, again, saw the sickest of the sick, and the majority of the time, they either did not leave the hospital because they passed away, or they did leave the hospital, but they were terribly debilitated and disabled and couldn't do anything for themselves, right? Like they could not get back to their baseline. And so I never got to see, well, not never, but rarely did I get to see those success stories of people who stay in the outpatient world and they're doing great. They're taking their medications. They're not ending up in the hospital. Like they're thriving. I see that rarely. And so I am a little biased, I think, just because of everything that I saw in that inpatient setting. Like looking back, I wish I knew that I was experiencing. It's actually a thing. It's called second victim syndrome, where you, as a healthcare provider, you're witnessing all of these things, whether it's a medical error that resulted in the harm of a patient, or you're just witnessing troubling and challenging things in a healthcare setting, and it's actually causing you to experience very negative emotions. And it took me years before I even found out that that's what I was experiencing and cope or dealing with. I wouldn't say I wasn't coping well, but I wasn't coping at all. I was just kind of oh, okay, it's part of the job, and then move on. And so I kind of lost my train of thought. But anyways, I think that that was just the most challenging part. I didn't get a break from that inpatient setting. It was just sick person after sick person after sick person.
I guess to frame that into a perspective where both myself and people could understand, in any given month, how many of your patients would result in mortality of life, or they wouldn't survive?
So I probably saw, I don't know, I could maybe see upwards of like 50 patients a month. It's a consult service. So we have a small number of patients that a larger team will ask us, hey, can you see this patient for a particular reason? Maybe they have a fever, or, they have a high white blood cell count, whatever it is. And so, yeah, it was maybe, I don't know, upwards of 50 patients that I would see, but at least 10%, if not 10 to 20% probably, of those patients would pass away. And it's not even always like during that time, right? Like when I'm seeing them, it could be a year from now that I may kind of like go. So I always would keep an active list of patients that I was like actively seeing. And then I would keep a separate list of like people I would kind of like check in on because they were still in the hospital and they were so tenuous that I knew we'd get called back to go see them again. And then I had another list of like people who'd been discharged and they're in the outpatient setting, they're doing well. And so I would kind of toggle between those lists, and every once in a while I kind of just see like what happened to them. And it would always be shocking when I would see like, oh, deceased. Like it'll say their name and deceased. And I remember there's certain people, I remember their names, like I remember their faces. And so, like vividly, our interactions, everything, I'm like, oh, I remember you. I remember the last time I saw you, and now you don't, like, you're not alive anymore. And so I don't know. I think for me being in that setting, not that I couldn't take it, I just feel like I didn't have the support internally to be able to process appropriately so that I can continue to do that level of work Monday through Friday at the same intensity that I was doing when I started.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, and I think a lot of people take for granted that they work jobs where they don't encounter death. They don't encounter people dying. Maybe not right in front of you, as you mentioned. It could be off camera, so to speak, to use the analogy since we're on camera. It could be an off camera death, right? Where it's out of your office, it's months or years later or a year later or so. But still you have a memory of having a consult with this patient, and you remember their face, and you remember maybe a personal connection you had with them about their daughter or whatever, and then they don't exist anymore. And that's happening over and over and over again. And it might not be the same like immersive level of PTSD as maybe a soldier in combat, but there is a level of trauma that I could see associated with that, because compared to the businessman or someone who's in construction or someone who also works in healthcare but doesn't work with patients who are dying, there is the key distinction between what you're doing and what most people do in their occupations is that you're interacting with people who, if you're seeing 50 patients, 5 to 10 a month are passing away months or, several months or to a year later. And I can just imagine that being jarring because it's not like a one-time thing. It repeats. It's it's almost like on a cycle.
Yeah. Well, it was also, I was dealing with all this in the context of me being a new mom. And so I was having trouble reconciling like, oh, when I go home, I get to be with my husband, I get to be with my newborn son, and they're so full of life. Like I just gave birth to life. And then, but at work, I'm constantly in a circle of death almost. It sounds terribly morbid, but that's what it was. That was my reality. And I was having to like try to compartmentalize those things because they were very different environments, and trying not to bring the stress and the heaviness of my work life into my home life so that I can keep that part, positive and keep it enjoyable. But when you're around so much death and you care, it's just hard. And I was talking to one of my colleagues. So she's now in the position that I was in when I was full-time clinical. She's since taken that position. She's been in it for about a year now. And so she actually said that it was an interesting perspective, and I totally understood it. But she was basically saying, it is challenging when the patients die, but it doesn't faze her too much because she actually dealt with her mother passing away a couple of years ago. And her mother had end-stage breast cancer. I'm pretty sure it was breast cancer. And she was like, seeing that, like seeing someone you love so much suffer like that, she was like, nothing can compare to that. And I've had that same thing happen to me. My grandfather, who was like my father figure growing up, because I didn't grow up with my father, my biological father, my grandfather was like my father figure growing up. And so watching him, slowly transitioned from a very, large, big guy. He's like 6'3", 6'4". I'm pretty sure I might be exaggerating, but he was tall. He was tall, big guy. He was a horse trainer in West Virginia. Like he was strong. And to see him go from that to he can't even like wipe his butt, he can't even eat his food. Like to go from that all because of cancer is like your perspective definitely changes when it's like that close to home. And fortunately for her, it made it to where she could manage a little bit better than for me. For me, it was like, man, this sucks for, these people and these families. And it's just almost like a reality check of like, you have absolutely no control over everything. And it didn't, for me, it didn't mean like, don't do it anymore. Like, don't keep pursuing, don't keep, trying to help. But I think it's just a reality of like, we really don't have any control over anything. And the best we can do is just try, be respectful, be honoring to people. Because those are the things that we have control over. We have control over our actions, but we don't always have control over the outcomes.
I'm curious, when you were in that phase of life where you are dealing with death at work and then you come home to new life, were you in a place where you were bringing it home mentally, emotionally, where I'm not saying it was maybe drastically impacting the family.
Yeah.
But was there ever a time when your husband was like, hey, can we have a talk? Like something's happening here.
No, actually, fortunately not. I think what I did find was that, like, it's not like I was neglecting my duties at home, fortunately. But I think I would, like, that would be my topic of conversation. Like, let me tell you about this patient, or let me tell you about this attending. Attending is the academic medicine term for the kind of the top physician. Let me tell you about this attending that I can't stand. Like it would be those kind of conversations, but it was still very like negative, right? So I was still fulfilling all my duties at home, but I didn't have like a healthy like work life to the point where I'm like, oh, let me tell you about this wonderful story, like those wonderful stories of this patient being discharged or this patient getting their transplant and they're doing great. Like that was just far and few between. Like it was just always a challenge to like actually get that wonderful story. Yeah.
So you transitioned from being a clinical provider into now more of an education and teaching role.
Yes.
Somewhere in the past year and a half, or?
It's been almost 2 years.
2 years.
I will be celebrating 2 years as a faculty member, I think June 24th.
So what does that entail? Do you teach upcoming students essentially what you've learned and what you applied as a provider over the course of your working history?
Yeah. So my role as a faculty member, I am a faculty member in the same PA program that I graduated from, which is such an honor and a privilege to give back in that way at the same institution that I got my training from. And so we have our kind of, how can I describe this? Our curriculum is split up into two different categories. Didactic, which is primarily the students are in the classroom, they're in labs, they're doing all those cool things. And then clinical, which is when they're actually on their rotations and they're kind of doing that more hands-on, real-world application of the stuff that they learned in the classroom. So I am more on that clinical side, guiding them through that process. There's a lot of standardized testing that goes with that, a lot of advising that we do, not even just career advising, but it's just getting through life advising, especially for me being a woman. I'm still relatively young. I have a family. And so I would have students, just asking more personal questions of like, how do you manage like, me and my husband, like, we want to start having kids. Like, how did you manage that? Or, I'm dealing with this. Like, what would you do? So people would definitely, or my students would definitely ask me more personal questions, which I am more than happy to share because I've only been a provider for, I guess, 5 years. I graduated in 2020. Yes, 5 years. But I've learned a good bit, I think. And so I try to, especially when I think about like well-being, I'm very big in like the well-being space because of the struggles that I had as a clinical provider and just all the troubles and suffering that I witnessed. And so I try to show my students that you don't have to be stuck in this place of like sadness because of the stuff that you're dealing with at work. Like you can you can maybe have a little bit more agency so that you can truly enjoy the work that you do. So being in the education world, I love it a lot. It's great for just my home life. It provides a lot more balance for me to be like the wife and mom that I want to be, like be more present. I get to be creative. I get to do a lot of different things that I didn't really get a chance to do on the clinical side. And so it's kind of opened up a new world of, I guess, intellectual creativity that I'm really enjoying.
My wife's a PA, which you know, and she has talked to me about the didactic and the clinical side. And she did her grad school in South Carolina. And it's so much you guys go through. Like, doctoral program is rigorous for sure, but the way I describe it as a non-medical professional is like people who go through a PA program and choose that career path, they go through maybe like 70 to 80% of what doctors go through as far as like knowledge impartation, like the things you learn, you probably are able to do. You're probably, I guess a better way to word it is you're capable of doing like 70% or 80% of what a doctor can do, but you do it in like 2 years instead of like 8 to 12 with like med school residencies,
fellowships,
and then fellowships. Like, and so it's just an intense like sprint really is what it is. And so I have a lot of admiration for physician assistants now that I have been the one who gets the conversations over dinner about what those classes are like and what the rotations are like.
Now, were y'all dating when she was in school?
We were engaged.
Okay.
We were dating for a part of it, and then we were engaged for I think most of it. It gets blurry. Oh gosh, we got married in May of 2021.
Okay.
So we just hit 5 years.
Yes.
And then she graduated. We were engaged for like a year, maybe like a year and some change before that.
Okay.
And the program's 2 years. So like part of it dating, part of it engaged. Okay. Yeah. It's a hard program.
Yeah, no, that's similar for us actually. Ben and I, so he was in residency when we met. So he was actually still in his training while I was in my training. And so he was maybe in his last year of training, and then I was in my last year and a half of training. And so I was just getting out of the didactic phase, like my last couple of months of didactics and then my final year of clinical. So similar trajectory.
You mentioned that you grew up in a single parent household. My dad also grew up in a single parent household. So anytime someone mentions it, it's kind of like, of course I didn't. My dad was married and has been married to my mom for over 30 years and kind of altered the course of his life, which it seems you're doing with your husband. You guys have a beautiful family.
Thank you. You have a beautiful family as well.
Thank you. But I'm just curious, as a child, what was it like growing up in a single parent household, having your grandfather as your father figure? What did growing up in that environment look like?
I have to make sure that as I say this, that I am as respectful as possible, because my mother is phenomenal and she did so much for me. She sacrificed so much for me. And at the same time, growing up in a single parent household is not ideal. I don't think in any way, shape, or form that we were designed to function in a single parent household, because you're missing a key part of your life. And I think, I think with that, there were just, I think, more of the common struggles. And this is not standard, I'll say this, but I think with my particular experience, like my mom, so she actually I got my bachelor's degree before my mom got her bachelor's degree, just to maybe add a little bit of context for you to see what I'm saying. But like socioeconomically, there were struggles. Financially, there were struggles. We moved around quite a bit. When I was younger, I think, I don't know, I remember doing like preschool in Maryland. That might not be right. I think, I remember doing like preschool in Maryland, kindergarten in Georgia, 1st through 3rd grade in West Virginia. And we were living with my grandmother at the time. Moved here in the middle of 3rd grade, back to Georgia in the middle of 3rd grade. We were staying with a friend that like first year. And then 4th grade was an apartment. 5th grade was a different apartment. 5th and 6th grade, I think, were the same apartment. And then 7th grade, my mom was able to buy a home, her first home. And she was, 6th grade, 12. So she was in her late 30s. maybe 37. And that was her first home. And she had only had like an associate's degree. And so yeah, just to kind of just see the timeline of like we moved quite a bit. We had to stay with people over time. She at some point, I remember she lost her job. That's what it was. As soon as we moved here, actually.
Wow.
Maybe within a year or so, she lost the job that she had, like a salary paying job. And so she had to find work through like temp agencies. And she had like, I think upwards of 2, maybe 3, but she had like a season where she had more than one job just to, provide. And so I think there's just so much stress that comes with that. It's hard not to be very emotional. It's hard not to be very angry in that setting when you have so much weight on your shoulders. So I think seeing like how much she sacrificed was so admirable. And I also think seeing how that environment, maybe shaped our relationship, can sometimes has made things challenging. Especially now that, okay, I'm now older, I'm out of the house. And I think I definitely got a little bit like, I don't think defiant's the right word, but I think I can definitely get into a place of like, I want to do things differently. That's the good way to say it. I want to do things differently, not because you didn't do things well, but because I want to
add your own flavor.
I just want to have my own flavor. I want to do something different than what I experienced. And that has been probably my biggest motivation as not only a wife, but just as a mom. Like I want to be a mom that my kids, and not saying that this is not my mom, but like I want to be a mom that like my kids feel comfortable around. I want to be humble enough to say I'm sorry when I'm wrong. Like I want to teach kind of those principles so that my children can always feel safe. I have found that there are 2 families that I really admire. One here in Georgia that actually goes to our church, and another family who I actually met in Texas when I first became a believer. And in both scenarios, they both have daughters. Maybe it's daughters. Daughters are probably easier than boys.
I'm a fan of daughters.
I was like, you have a daughter. I had 2 boys, so I guess I just, messed that up for myself.
It's never too late.
More kids. But they both have 2 daughters. And they have such a wonderful, trusting relationship with their daughters. Like, their daughters really value their opinions. They value their guidance. They talk to them about things. And it's not like a friendship. Like, that is a dangerous place. I think when you're trying to be your child's friend, like, I don't agree with that. Sorry. I'm looking at the camera. I'm breaking, what is it, the fourth wall? I don't know.
There you go, fourth wall. You know some production terms.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I do not in any way, shape, or form agree with trying to be your child's friend. I think what is better and what makes more sense is that you are opening up this safe space for your child to make mistakes, for your child to learn and grow. You're keeping an eye out, but you're not like, micromanaging and like dictating everything. Like, I think there's a way to have a disciplined household while still providing some freedom to just learn and grow. And these 2 families that I'm thinking of in particular, I think they've done that. And that's why they have such great relationships with their children who are now adults. They're getting married. They've graduated college, all these things. And like, that is what I desire in my relationship with my children. Like, I want them to see me as the parent that they feel safe around and that will, support them no matter what.
Hearing you describe that, this is probably a poor example, but I'm going to try and use it. When you parent like that, it's like you take the best parts of a democracy as like a governmental system and, believe it or not, the best parts of a dictatorship, and you combine them together in a parenting style.
Yeah.
Dictatorships have positives. They are mostly negative, but there are positives. You have a strong leader.
Yeah.
Establishing order, setting forth a vision, making hard choices for the governed. Those are maybe some redeemable qualities of a dictatorship.
Yeah.
There's like 1,000 other ones that are bad. And then the same with democracies. They have good things. There's you vote for your politicians.
Yeah.
The people have a voice. There's feedback loops that are accepted and are useful for impacting change. There is think about your local congressman. They will take feedback from their constituents and then apply it to their policy making. And if they don't, then they get voted out and someone else comes in. So if you take those and you apply them to parenting, if you're a parent who casts vision for the family and is leading with boldness and making the hard choices for the governed, the kids, and then on the other end, you're allowing those constituents, your children, to come and bring feedback.
Yeah.
And maybe not the voting part is applicable, but like there's a healthy feedback loop where it's not just my way or the highway, but there is a consent of the governed type. They don't make the rules, but they have a say in the family. They have their voice matters. You combine those two together, and it seems like you get to a place where the parenting style you just described, where maybe friendship isn't the best way to be best friends with your child, but there's a healthy respect and leadership role established with the parents.
Yeah.
But there's also a personal connection tether where they can come to you. You can go to them and apologize when you mess up. And I think it builds trust long term. I think it builds a relationship that blossoms in its teenage years, which every teenager is going to have their rebellious stage. I'm not saying it fixes the teenage rebellion stage, but
Right.
But when they get into their 20s and their 30s and later in life, they begin to view life differently. And then it really gives them a long-term respect for the parents. And you have a relationship that lasts long-term.
Yeah.
In that regard. Regarding being, going back to growing up in that single parent household, what was your relationship like with your father, if you had it at all? Did you know him during that time? Was he in your life, even though he didn't live in the home? What was that like?
So that's interesting. So my mom always tells me that I met him when I was a baby. Obviously, I don't remember that. And I have no picture evidence. So, but it happened. But basically what happened, so when my mother met my father, they were in DC, Maryland. Everybody grew up in the DMV area. And so I was born in DC. And soon after I was born, my mom moved to Georgia. Cheaper cost of living, all those things. As a single parent, that was just the best thing for her. And so again, we had moved back to like the north for a period of time. And then when I hit midway through third grade at the age of 9, moved back to Georgia. We've been in Georgia ever since. And so when I was in fourth grade, I don't know if my dad initiated contact or if my mom initiated contact, but in fourth grade, my dad started reaching out. And so like he would call my mom, for example, and I would have phone conversations with him. I remember he bought me a bike. I do remember that. It was a blue bike, baby blue. And so I remember that, and we would have conversations like at least once a week. And then he came down to visit. So from my recollection, I would consider that the first time I met my dad was when I was 9. And he stayed in a hotel nearby. I remember we went bowling. I suck at bowling. Now I sucked then. And so oddly, I felt really weird, like this guy I'm meeting for the first time and I'm a terrible bowler. That was like one of the things I was thinking of. But I guess because I was trying to perform a little bit, like show you like I'm a great daughter or whatever. I don't know. But
those are real feelings.
I'm in hindsight, now that I'm saying it, like reflecting, I'm like, oh, that's probably why I felt so sad that I couldn't bowl, because I wanted to like prove myself almost. I don't know.
Impress him maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though you didn't really need to.
Right. But in my 9-year-old self, I'm like, I gotta, I want to be liked, right?
Yeah.
So we went bowling. I remember we went to the mall. We probably either went to like Perimeter Mall or Mall of Georgia. I don't know. But when malls were cool back then. And we took I will always remember this. We took a photo, like went to one of those little photo booths, took a little photo, and I can't remember. It either came out as a keychain or like one of like those standard like 4 photos. Maybe it was both, but we took a photo and we had photos. So that was my photo evidence. This did happen. And so we went to Olive Garden. Like I remember all these things like it was yesterday. And I remember going to school during this time and telling my friends like, oh, I'm going to be out of school for a couple of days because my dad's coming to visit. Like I was so excited. And sadly, one of the last days that he was there, him and my mom actually got into an argument. I don't know the context of the argument, but they got into an argument and he just like left, like didn't say goodbye or anything. He just left, and he took the bag that had our picture in it from the mall. And so, and that was like the last time I heard from him, I just knew him briefly for that year, essentially as a 9-year-old, and then didn't hear from him again. And I remember I had his phone number, so I would try to call him on like I think we had a house phone. Yeah. Probably tried to call him on the house phone. He would not answer. So yeah, I just couldn't contact him anymore. So I always grew up, probably because I watched way too many movies, but I grew up telling my mom that like, oh, one day I'm going to like hire a private investigator to find my dad. Cause I didn't know anything about him. I didn't know where he lived, like knew nothing. And, I was 21. I was about to graduate from college. This was my senior year of college at UGA. And 2 really cool things happened. So one, I got a phone call that I got a job in Texas that I had been waiting months to find out about. And so I got that phone call, was super excited about that. And then literally like 10 minutes later, I'm sitting in organic chemistry, mind you, I'm like trying to be studious. I already failed organic chemistry once. I'm trying to pass this time. And so I'm taking organic chemistry for the second time, about to graduate. And 10 minutes after I get this phone call that I got the job that I had been waiting for, I get a Facebook message from my dad. And I don't remember what the message said, but it was just kind of a short, like, hey, Taylor, I'm your dad. And it was just very brief. And it was crazy because I had just called my mom telling her that I got the job. I call her back. I walk out of the classroom again, out of this huge lecture hall. I call her again and I'm crying, like boohoo crying. Because I'm like, oh my God, my dad just messaged me. Like, what do I do? What do I say? Like, I was just like totally overwhelmed with like emotion. And so that was actually the beginning of our relationship. I would say the second beginning, or the third, if you count us meeting when I was a baby.
Yeah.
That was the third beginning of our relationship. And the beginning was a challenge just because I was very indifferent, though I had always desired to know my dad and have a relationship with him. I didn't know him, right? Like I spent 21 years essentially of my life, like not knowing him at all, not knowing anything about his family, his upbringing, where he lived, what he did for a living. And so the first couple of years were a challenge. I think I was like a little manipulative because he also, the first time we met, we probably just had a good like cordial relationship, like virtually over the phone for about a year. So from age 21 to 2020 to 22. And then he came to visit me when I was living in Texas, and we were at Cheesecake Factory, and we were sitting at the table, and he was like, you know, T, he calls me T, that's my nickname. And he was like, I will tell you whatever you want to know about, you know, why I wasn't around and all these things. And I just told him like, you don't have to, like, I have already forgiven you for, you know, not being there, not being present. And all I want to do is focus on the future. And he's never said that, but I know that was very like freeing for him to like know that we can have like a fresh start. And I was very ready to have that fresh start. And we've been great ever since. I love my dad so much.
Wow.
He's like one of my favorite people. I love talking to him, and we don't talk all the time. We don't talk as much as I would like to, probably. And that's just his own just personality. He's not the most emotional guy in the world, or I wouldn't say not the most emotional. He's not the most connected to his emotions.
Maybe more emotionally distant.
Yes, that's a great way to say it. He is definitely emotionally distant, but I know that he loves me so much. I know that he values me, like he values my opinion, which is so wonderful, having grown up not feeling like my opinion was valid or not feeling like I was good or worthy enough. And for him to, you know, ask me questions and tell me about stuff and like just all these like random, like he's like a flight of ideas sometimes, but he'll just have conversation. And I love when I get to see him. I love when I get to be around him and just get a glimpse into his life. It's such a blessing to me. So we have a wonderful relationship, I would say. Could it be better? Do I desire more? 100%. But I think, not so much like come to terms, but I have released him from being something that he's not. Like, he is not the dad that I'm going to talk to every single day. Like, that's just not my reality. And I hope that maybe one day it will be, but that's not my reality right now. And I have absolutely no desire to feel bitterness or resentment around that. Like, I'm just thankful that you're in my life. And I know that when I do need you, you'll be there and you'll be supportive and you'll help me however you can. So yeah, he's great. He's interesting.
Yeah.
He's your they guy.
Yeah, there you go. That's an incredible redemption story. There's so many stories that we hear, see on the algorithm and all that. And even in my own family, my dad grew up with that dad. I hear and have become familiar with stories where there is resentment, there is bitterness, there is a pain point there. And I'm sure there was for you, of course, too. But how freeing it is when you just allow, and you didn't say explicitly now, but I just know that this is part of your story.
Yeah.
When you allow Jesus to come in, do all the surgery on your heart, and then now you can present a fixed version of yourself that you didn't do anything to earn. God did it for you to the world. And maybe without salvation, without being a believer in Christ, you wouldn't be able to maybe feel that way towards him.
Absolutely
Most
not.
people don't feel that way towards
No,
him.
I wouldn't have wanted to have a relationship with him probably.
Yeah.
I would have been like, so to give a practical example, so it's me, I'm the oldest. I have a half brother who I don't really have much of a relationship with. He's maybe, I don't know, a year or two younger than me. And then my dad has twins that he adopted. So they're adopted twin boys. And they're, I don't know, 4 years younger than me. But all that to say, when I first started having a relationship with my dad, I think I asked my dad for my half brother's phone number. I don't know how I contacted him. But I reached out to him and I was like, hey, like, I'm your sister, like, let's connect. Because I always grew up wanting siblings. Like, I would ask my mom, like, can you like adopt a kid or something? Because I was so bored by myself. But I was so excited to know, like, oh, I have brothers, I have siblings. Like, I want to get to know them. And I remember he was so upset with me that I had a relationship with our dad. And it was more so because I was willing to forgive him. And he straight up told me, he was like, I don't see, and we actually had a very different upbringing. So I had really no contact with my dad. My half brother, he actually did have a good amount of contact with my dad, and my dad was in his life as he grew up. And so he, even though he had that contact with my dad, there was so much still built up resentment and bitterness because they didn't live in the same household. They didn't live in the same state. There was still a lot of, I think, issues with the fact, like, okay, you have two biological children and yet you decided to adopt two kids and they're in your household. You got married, like, you do have a family, right? And you decided and you chose to, I guess, love this family more than your biological family. And so that's how he felt. And I remember when I told him, like, you know, I've forgiven him. Like, I just want to have a great relationship with my dad. Like, this is a great opportunity for me to get to know him. And he, like, just straight up was like, I can't associate with you, pretty much, because I wanted to have a relationship with our dad. And I have not talked to him since. I mean, hasn't been like 10 years ago. Wow. It's been so long.
He wanted you to join him in hatred.
Yeah.
He wanted you to go down into the pit.
Yeah.
That we all find ourselves in. Various things cause the pit in life. Anger at a parent, depression. There's also anxiety. We can all find ourselves in various pits, and he wanted you to join him there.
Yeah. And now, granted, I think they actually do have, I think, a cordial relationship now. Like, they talk to each other now, but it's, I don't know, it's as much as I desire to have, like, a relationship with my brothers, because, again, I always wanted siblings, like, it's kind of like with my dad. Like, it's just something that I've just, like, let go. Like, I've surrendered. And maybe I should put a little bit more effort into it. I don't know. But I already have such a full life, like, with my husband, with our family, and trying to almost, like, break that, like, generational kind of curse. Yeah. Essentially of, like, well, this is where I came from. This is my upbringing, but, like, we're trying to start something new. Yeah. And so I just try not to, like, dwell on that. It's, like, to the point where I don't even think about it. Sometimes I forget I have brothers. Hopefully they don't hear this and think that I, like, hate them. I don't. I want to have a relationship with you, but but it's just, like, I don't know, my life is so full that it doesn't really affect me or faze me. Yeah.
You're not possessed with this it's a spectrum, right? You're in the middle.
Yeah.
On one side, there's being possessed with so much hatred you want nothing to do with them. On the other end of the spectrum, there's this possession with, oh my God, I want to know my siblings. I have to know them. I feel like there's a hole in my life without knowing them.
Yeah.
And it's like neither one of those positions are healthy, right? You don't want to be in a hatred of siblings or relative, dad who left, whatever. You also don't want to be in this codependent, which is not really the right word, but it's like this imaginative dependency where you don't have the relationship, but you feel like you wouldn't be complete without it. On the other end, there is a healthy middle where you'd love to have the relationship, but you're also not going to be angry and bitter.
Right.
You're just going to be at peace. Even keel. That's what my dad would call it. You're just even keel. You're centered, and you have a foundation on something that's stronger than the affirmation or the validation of a family member.
Right.
And I think that's just a wonderful thing. I wanted to touch on something you were mentioning earlier when you were moving from place to place, apartment to state to state. What you were describing is instability. Mm-hmm. And what a lot of people miss about single parent homes is that they lack, like you mentioned earlier, the importance of having the other person in the house. They lack the stability that comes with a two-parent household. Mm-hmm. Not only do you have two people to help raise children, maybe one's more disciplinarian, maybe one's more caring, or maybe you're both a mixture of each. But in addition to that, you have stability of income. You have a double income a lot of times, or you're afforded the opportunity to have one person who makes a very high income and the other person can stay at home with the kids. There's multiple metrics where stability is a factor. And without that stability that comes from the presence of both parents, the man and the woman in the home, the whole thing falls apart. You end up moving from place to place. You don't just have an emotional gap in your life where there wasn't that person there. You also have a gap of, where am I going to live?
Right.
Where's my next meal going to come from? The clothes for school. There are so many things that start to unravel and fall apart when you don't have that parent.
Yeah.
Or when you don't have both parents, I mean. And I think that is often overlooked when we talk about the topic of single parent households. We all kind of know, two parents is better than one. But for men out there who don't stay in their kids' lives, or sometimes it's women. Like
Absolutely.
I have friends who have a good friend of mine, actually. He became the primary guardian of his son because the wife was crazy on drugs, went into the mental hospital stuff. And so it's like, it's not always the man. It's usually stereotypically the man, but it's also women too. But you need both people in the home to provide the stability that I would argue God created it to be.
Yeah.
If you are, believe in the Bible and you're a believer in Jesus, there's analogy again, over and over again about the image that a husband and wife is replicating, or being maybe a not a placeholder, but it is a foreshadow.
It's a reflection, yeah.
A reflection. That's the best way to put it. It's a reflection. It's an image of the relationship of Christ in the church.
Right.
Right. Obviously, you're looking at hundreds of millions of believers. Some, most have now died, and some are alive, and some will yet to be born.
Yeah.
With one God human, right? Just to put it in a very quick, awkward way to say it. But yeah. But that relationship, Jesus Christ and the church, it's this union between two entities, and it's reflected.
Right.
And it provides a perfect stability of how things should be, right?
Yeah.
It's reflected in how a home should be. In the beginning, Genesis chapter 1, God created the family, Adam and Eve. Then he created children.
Right.
And then it went from there. And then the religious institutions came after that. So on the subject of religion, it's family first.
Right. Absolutely.
I had someone tell me recently that a leader in their life shared with them that sometimes ministry comes before family. And me and my friend both agreed.
I don't agree.
Me and my friend both agreed that's wrong.
Yeah.
Like if you're in ministry, or you're someone who works at a church or a religious organization or nonprofit, and you find yourself putting your job or your occupation or God's calling on your life before what's happening in your home, I'm gonna go ahead and say that's a sin.
It's backwards. Absolutely.
It's wrong.
Yeah.
That's not how God intended it.
And you see the reflection of that. You see it's all about the fruit, right? So you see I will say that I can definitely tell when, again, going back to those two family dynamics that I admire so much. They're not perfect by any means, but I feel like they've always put their family first. And I can definitely, whether it's, with younger kids or older kids, I mean, I work with students and they're adults, granted, but like I work with a lot of people who have parents essentially. And I can definitely tell when those priorities are a little backwards, for lack of a better words. And yeah, it just shows very clearly, for sure. And I have always, it's funny that you said that Haley was on the show, because I've told this to her before. I've told her, I'm like, hey, I will be late to this church function so that my family can have a home cooked meal. Like, period. Like, I'm sorry, but I'm also not sorry. Like, I love the work that I do. I love that I get to serve in this way, but my service is first to my family. Mm-hmm. And I want to prioritize that the best that I can. Mm-hmm. So if that means that I'm gonna be 30 minutes late to the function, I'm 30 minutes late, but I had to feed my family.
Yeah.
I wanted to put my baby to bed. Mm-hmm. Like, those things are very important to me. That's why I was, 15
minutes late tonight, and I ain't mad at it. I ain't mad at it.
And that's how I live my life. And I hate being late, mind you. Like, I want to be as punctual as possible. But sometimes in just family and life, and it's just, you're trying to juggle it all and figure out what means the most to you. And, sometimes things don't just, come out as perfectly as you would like, but I have grace for myself.
Yeah. And you're prioritizing the most important thing. My dad, when I was a kid, I'm like 5, 6, 7 years old, would come into our room like before bed when we're like getting ready for nighttime. And I have memories, he would be down on his knees and say like a prayer. Mm-hmm. And I shared a room with my brother, so we didn't have that many rooms in our house. And so like, I think at one point it was me and my older brother, and at one point it was me and my younger brother. We shared a room. And so there'd be like this group prayer. He's on his knees, we're like laying in bed, and he's like, it's like a 5 to 10 minute ordeal. It's not like a quick thing. And it's like, and the point I'm making is, if he did that one time and then skipped the other 4,000 nights of, bedtime routines, right, of a child's life, or it's more than 4,000, but you get the point. If he did it one and then skipped it all the other times for church functions, or he was big into softball leagues and all these different things, I probably wouldn't remember it. But because he said no to other things, church functions or other things besides church, I don't remember like a specific instance. I just remember it was a regular occurrence. Mm-hmm. I might have a memory of 5 or 10 of them, but he probably did it hundreds of times, right? And if he didn't prioritize that and made that a part of the, not maybe every single night, but that was a regular occurring thing, I wouldn't remember it, and it wouldn't have an impact on me. It wouldn't shape how I view like wanting to be a parent in my household. And so I say all that to say, when we prioritize the family and we prioritize things in the home, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It helps provide stability.
Yeah.
Which translates to finances, which translates to emotions, which translates to mental development and practical development and life lessons they learn and discipline. I mean, there's so many areas where stability has a ripple effect in a child's life and in a spouse's life. And when you remove that stability piece, which is in this argument that I'm making, 2 parents in the home, you are completely disrupting not only the way God intended it to be, but really the best way that family life should be conducted.
Yeah. And I like that you brought up like it's instability. That instability is dynamic. There's so many factors. There's so many components. Because I think one thing I want to clarify is that instability is not always financial. So I know people that I went to college with, for example, and they're single parents, but they went on to be a lawyer, or they went on to be a doctor. Obviously, those are very well-paying jobs. So financially, you're probably fine. But it's beyond that, right? It's the emotional, it's the mental, it's the it's the social, it's all of those things. Where, to your point, it just goes beyond kind of the material, and recognizing that mom can't be dad and dad can't be mom. Like, you can't be 2 parents. Like, it's just it's you need more. You need you need the total package. And I'm just curious if there are any people out there who are in a single parent household if they felt like it was adequate. Let's say now that they are older, maybe they have their own family. I just think that would be very rare for someone to say like, oh no, I don't have any parent wounds. Like, I'm fine. Like, if you really like reflect, like there has to be something that is missing that you realize like, okay, that totally changed the trajectory of my life.
Maybe a large percentage of them would suppress it or pretend it doesn't exist or lie and say, no, I'm fine. But if I believe the words I'm saying, which is this is the way it should be, man, woman, household, children, and if one of those is pulled out, it's wrong and causing damage, then by consequence of my statement, every single child who grows up in that environment has to have some, it doesn't have to be like this deep emotional trauma where you can't function, but there's something, there's a hole that if it's not addressed through, we would say it's through our relationship with Jesus Christ, it fills every hole or void that would be created by the sin of man in the world we live. But if it's never addressed, right, then there is a hole or void there that you don't fill, and it causes that problem of emotional instability and mental instability. And you could still succeed financially, and you could achieve the financial stability as you guys have done in your family, and you can correct that part. But if you don't treat the internal wound, not to go really deep, but like whatever that may be, and it happens at varying levels, that can fester. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
you it told me earlier you were in the process of aspiring to be an author. Tell me about that. Like, what are you writing?
Nothing right now. No, just kidding. This kind of goes back to me being in the academic world and being an educator. It has opened up so many just opportunities for me. I always grew up feeling like I wasn't creative. And I think I felt that way because I viewed creativity as like an art. So like I can paint or I can draw, I can sing. I can sing a little bit.
Can we hear a sample?
Absolutely not.
Come on.
No. So funny story, segue slightly. When I was growing up with my mom, I wanted to actually be a singer, but I was too shy to like sing in front of people. So I asked her to get me a recorder so that I could record myself singing so that she could like hear how great I was so that I can become like some big famous star. She got me a recorder, like the one that's like... the one that's like,
talk about a
clarinet.
Misunderstanding.
And it was, what color was that clarinet? That clarinet was a light, like it was a see-through blue.
Oh gosh.
So you could see all my spit and like the it was nasty. Yeah. Anyways, I needed it for school. So I think that's why she got it, like knowing that I needed it for school. Like she's like, oh, recorder. But like I wanted to record myself singing. Anyways, I say that to say I will not be singing in front of you. I do sing and dance a lot at home, probably much to Ben's dismay.
I'm going to have Ben like sing a video.
I'm constantly singing.
I'm going to have, I need a sample.
Like I would low-key want to be in the opera. I always tell Ben like, should I quit my job and just go to Broadway? But I would not make it. But
I love the Phantom of the Opera. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't.
I'm not a huge musical person, but it's a pretty good one.
Okay.
It's like,
I don't like musicals, which is so weird.
I don't either.
I don't think I give them a chance.
But I like that one, and I like La La Land, which is a movie.
See, I want to watch La La Land, but I can't bring myself to do it because it's a musical.
Do you like jazz?
Yeah, I do actually.
I love jazz, so that buys me into that musical.
Okay, that's good to know.
I have a poster of La La Land on my wall.
So you're serious?
I mean, I don't watch it like every year. I watch it probably once every 3 to 5 years. I mean, It's not like I don't love La La Land as much as I love Star Wars. Like Star Wars is more home base for me. Okay. But I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. The fantasy and the space opera is not for everybody. But anyways, we were way off from you writing your book.
I'm so sorry. Okay, writing a book and writing. So anyways, what I was saying was that I grew up not thinking that I was creative because I had this kind of very narrow vision of what creativity is. Once I got into the academic world, I really had a better understanding of other ways to be creative. And for me, it was just intellectual creativity. So being able to, write out my ideas and write out a proposal so that I can get a grant for somebody to fund this random idea that I have. But they fund the grant or they fund the proposal because they see the potential in the work that I'm trying to do because it'll benefit the students, it'll benefit a patient, it'll benefit, my colleagues, whatever it may be. And so doing that got me very motivated of like, okay, hey, I can write a grant. I can write a paper, like an academic paper and present my results. I can do like national presentations and disseminate, the work that I've done and the things that I'm passionate about. And so as I've gotten more into that, I've just had more of an inclination of like, hey, like I want to write a book. I have no idea what I want to write a book about. Someone actually asked me that recently and I was like, I don't know. It's just an idea that popped in my head, but I felt very strongly about it. That's how one of the ways that I feel like God speaks to me is that I can get like emotional when I feel like something is like, oh, I think this is real. Like, I feel like this is like a clear direction that I need to take. And so I don't know the timing. I don't know the title. I don't know the topic, but I do feel like I want to write a book about something that I'm passionate about and something that really shapes the way that I view the world. I guess my ideal view of the world, maybe. And yeah, I kind of want to just use this time in my life to just practice. There's a book that I'm reading right now. It's called Becoming the Writer That You Already Are. I'm blanking on the name of the author, so I'm so sorry to that author. But it's a really, really good book because it just talks about how writing is a process. And even more than that, writing is a challenge. We should not view writing as something that should just come to us. There are moments where you can't write. There are moments where your thoughts can't even flow. She actually breaks it down very well and talks about there's a head piece to it, there's a heart piece, and there's just the technical writing, the syntax. And you have to make sure everything connects and it flows. And that is a challenge. And so as I've been reading that book, that has really helped me in my writing because it's making me realize okay, I shouldn't expect to get this done in 2 weeks, for example. This could take me months. This could take me years to write out one little project that I did. And that is okay. There is no rush. And so I think with me wanting to be an author, it's not something that I want to do because of any prestige. Great. I can get promoted because of it. That's nice. But it's really more so because I just enjoy that line of work, I guess. I enjoy being able to disseminate my ideas. I love connecting with other people and kind of learning well, what did you get from this? How can we collaborate? I love cold calling people and just saying hey, I'm Taylor. I saw that you do this. Can we can I have a meeting with you? Can we talk? And that's actually how I've been able to kind of have doors open for me, doors that otherwise were closed. But because I reached out to someone, now they're helping me do research. They're helping me connect with someone. And it's all just, just sharing ideas. And that's the cool thing about being in education. Really, the sky is the limit in terms of, where these ideas can take you. And I love that. I love that so much. It's just a lot of freedom and flexibility to be creative.
For sure. I resonate 100% what you shared because I remember I took an art class in high school. I was in 10th grade. I couldn't draw very well. We did everything. We did draw. We did the 3D type drawings where you look at you're creating a bird's eye view image of a city with skyscrapers and you do a certain way. We did charcoal drawings. We did pottery and clay stuff. And almost everything I did was not good. And I was like, okay, this isn't for me. Next. And so I resonate with that of not feeling creative. But like you said, there are more than just the stereotypical ways of being creative that exist. This right here is creative.
I was just about to say
we are
that.
creating something in the moment now. Last year, I embarked on a journey that has been on a dormant pause. It's not permanently deleted. It's just on pause with starting the podcast and having a baby. But my brother and I started writing a book. It is a high fantasy fiction novel. For those who don't know what high fantasy is, it's like Lord of the Rings.
So, okay.
So you have a medieval time period, but then you add dragons, dwarves, elves, magic system, different languages and races of beings and things. And it's a genre of interest that my brother and I have connected over for years with Lord of the Rings and other things as well. Aragon is another inspiration. It's a book written by Christopher Paolini. And anyways, so we started writing this, and there's so much that goes into it. It's different than nonfiction. I think what you were describing, you're trying to disseminate the things you've learned in life across a lot of ideas into almost like a knowledge handbook or a way of sharing things you've learned for practical application, where our project is more like, hey, just like really like, think of like stretching out like, you ever have like a wet towel or something, you got to stretch it out really wide. That's the example I'm getting in my head right now. Like we're like you're stretching out your imagination really wide, because that's what creating is. Whether you're trying to figure out how to transfer practical, real world knowledge into like digestible information for people, or like I'm creating creatures and like languages out of nowhere and trying to like make it make sense where it's enjoyable content. Anyways, we got like 18 chapters in, which is not a lot in this world. These books are like 60 to 80 chapters long, sometimes more. So it's very. We're in the introduction, but I share all that to say, I also felt like I wasn't very good at creating until really like the past year. Yeah. And I realized there's other ways you can create. You can write. You can create a world, you know. Creating a world is dumb unless you find a way to put it into a book and then sell it to a publisher, and then now you're making money out of it. Then it's not so dumb. J.K. Rowling did it with Harry Potter.
Absolutely.
J.R.R. Tolkien did it with Lord of the Rings. C.S. Lewis did it with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and all of his other writings. And so I think both are valid, and they've reached different audiences. There are people who are going to want to read your book about the things you've learned, and you're not just sharing the information like a textbook, but you're sharing the personal anecdote, right? And there are people who are hopefully going to read what I, create about dragons and monsters. And
well, but there's a role for it, right? Like there's a role for the practical, and there's also the role for the fantasy. And I say that because I wish I knew more about like the science behind this, but Ben was reading something, and it was basically telling him that, if you read more fiction books, you can actually, develop more compassion. And so he was talking, and my husband reads a lot, way more than I would like to read. But he always has a goal of like 11 to 12 books a year, for example. And so
that sounds like my brother.
Okay. Yeah. I'm like, how do you have time for all this stuff? But he decided that because he wanted to kind of grow in this compassion, grow in this creativity, that he should read a fiction book. And so he just, gave me a couple options. And so he's actually reading one of the Chronicles of Narnia books. Okay. I wish I actually knew their names, because I know there are like a lot of them. But he's reading one of them.
I don't know them all by heart. Caspian's one. Chronicles of Narnia is another.
He's reading one of them for this reason of just developing compassion. And so I say that to say that it's there is a role for both. He's typically more like the nonfiction side of things, very analytical, very intellectual,
pragmatic.
But there's a role for the other side, and this maybe does not apply at all. But I have, even though I'm very like type A, very like pragmatic person, like I love superhero movies. Like I wish I was a superhero sometimes. And it's like so random. But like stuff like that I feel like is cool.
Who's your favorite superhero?
Oh man. Okay.
If you say a DC character, you're going to be having to go out that door pretty soon.
No. No. The movies are also terrible. So I was never a comic book person, so I can't say like I'm like a superhero fan. But I would say from a movie standpoint, like when Marvel was like in its prime, like not the stuff that they've done like the last 5 years. It's not that great. But
we know. We're all on board. When I say we, all of the superhero movie people, we're with you.
But like when I was in college, like we would like buy the tickets in advance. Like we'd go to the late night movies. Like that was such a core memory for me. But my favorite superhero, maybe, okay.
Thor.
I'm going to say no. I'm going to say either the Winter Soldier. He's pretty awesome. Or my girl, what's her name?
Wanda.
No.
Captain Marvel.
No. What's her name? Scarlett Johansson. Black Widow. Because she's not a superhero.
It's interesting. You chose two people who don't have super capabilities.
Well, okay.
He's got
the Winter
arm.
Soldier, he's got like he's got that.
But
and he's
there's
also
nothing
like
super in his blood, in his muscles, in his.
I guess that's true.
Yeah, like Thor or like
the
Hulk.
But I think I like them because they are like they're humans, but they have like almost like superhuman capabilities. Like they're able to do like defy the odds and do all these like cool things.
They're normal people.
And this might be a conspiracy, but if you think about in the Bible, who was someone who had superhuman strength?
Samson.
Yes. And I think about that sometimes and I'm like, maybe there are superheroes in the world. There might be. I don't know. But I mean, that's a pretty like, I think about that. I'm like, I mean, he actually had superhuman strength, like legit had superhuman strength. And he was a person.
That's an interesting point. David killed a Goliath with a stone.
I mean, that makes no sense.
He's like 14 years old and you're throwing a rock through a sling so hard that it can kill a giant.
Kills like a 30-foot giant or however tall he was. So
15 feet or whatever. Yeah, maybe. So it's interesting that you like superheroes. I would not have guessed that about you.
That's a good thing.
Mine's Spider-Man.
He's pretty cool.
When I was 10 years old, I had a pool party for my 10th birthday. I guess I was turning 10. And my mom and dad, I was asking for a game. And there was a lot of times where I would ask for something and I didn't get it. We just didn't. We grew up in a household where you don't get everything you ask for. It wasn't that household. So I asked for it and I was like, can I please get this game, Spider-Man 2 on the PlayStation 2? It'd be amazing. And it was like, in my head, I'm like 50-50, I get it. We had the pool party, we do the cake and all that. And then at the end, we opened a couple presents and there it was. And I remember screaming my head off. I played that game for hours and hours and hours. Anyway, so I have these memories playing a video game. I'm playing the character that I'd see in the movie or read in the comic book. And that level of immersion, which I've talked about before, that level of immersion when you're playing the character. I'm a huge video gamer. I don't know if you knew that about me. But
oh, no, I didn't.
When you're playing as a character, it's a different level of immersion.
Okay.
Because you're experiencing their life. Like this particular game, a lot of games in this era, like 2000, 2007, were like this. You are really playing the story of the movie. Mm-hmm. So the video game world has shifted away from that in the past 15 to 20 years. But that 2001 to 2007, 8 era, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars games, and even this game, Spider-Man 2 and other Spider-Man games, the plot of the movie is very close to the plot of the game. So you're just like, you're going along in the story, you're obviously swinging webs, but you're facing the Green Goblin or you're facing Dr. Octopus. And so it's like, you feel like you are a part of the story.
Yeah.
And so it's just a whole nother level of immersion for someone as a form of entertainment, right? Because comic books is entertainment, reading a fiction novel is entertainment, watching a Marvel movie in theaters is opening night is entertainment, playing the game is entertainment. So you're engaging with an entertainment source, but there's just different mediums in which it can take place. And some are more immersive than others, and some immerse you in different ways than others. When your husband reads a fiction book, and my brother has shared this with me, I think a lot of readers who love reading, I don't love reading, similar to you, or we don't have the time, is what we would say.
I don't make the time.
We don't make the time. But like we don't read 50 books a year. My brother has, I think his record was like 40 books one year.
That's crazy.
Yeah, he's a huge reader.
Outside of being married, or in the context of being married with kids?
He's married and have kids right now.
Well, I know he has married.
Does it, and he does it.
Oh my gosh.
He reads like 3 books at a time. He reads I'm like, how do you do that? He has 3 contexts. He has a fiction context, so he'll read a book that's fiction. He'll read a book that relates to his work. He's a software engineer, security engineer. So he'll read something with like coding, things like that. And then he reads a book that is, I think it's like either nonfiction that has nothing to do with his work, or he'll read a fiction book that is like extremely fantasy oriented. So like you have a fiction book like a romance book. Not that he would read romance, but I don't know, like a thriller.
Yeah.
Like that's real world, and then you have a fiction book that's like dragons and elves and magic, and then you have this is about related to my work. I learned something practical, and he'll like, by switching the context, and they're very different. Each one he can compartmentalize them in their head. I'm like, I can't.
That's fascinating.
So for my medium is video games, and he plays video games too. I can't play multiple video games at once because I will like the context will. I could, but it's like the context will start to erode each other. I like to just play one, and then once I'm done with that one, I'll shift to something else.
Okay, yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, he reads a lot. And the point I was getting at is when people read who love reading like him, their level of immersion is they go there mentally, right? They're like, and Ben's probably the same way, where he's reading the book and he's like, his imagination just comes alive. Like, I don't know how it works. Maybe like you're picturing yourself there, or you're imagining yourself in the story, or you're anticipating what would happen next for the characters in fiction novels. But In the movie, you're like watching it and you can feel like you're there a little bit, but then the game, you are controlling the actions of the character. So anyways, tangent over. I loved Spider-Man 2 and the game, and Spider-Man, that solidified Spider-Man as my favorite superhero.
Yeah, I respect it.
Was the point of that. So when will your book come out?
It is 2026, 2050.
No.
Yeah.
How about 2030?
Oh, no.
Why not?
That's okay. You know what? I'm not going to count it out. I have kind of approached this as being very open-handed, and I am just going to follow it as the opportunity comes along. Having said that, I do feel like there's a component of like, hey, you just need to start. Like, I'm not the type of person that's like, oh, like how can I describe this? I think you have to be an active participant in the things that you want to achieve. Not everything is just going to kind of like just plop in your lap. So I feel like, though I'm very open-handed of like, as the opportunity comes about, as things develop, great. But also like I need to start. And I think I'm kind of in a stage of like, I'm still kind of learning. So there are different things that I'm doing right now that I think will make me more able and more successful when I get to that point. And I think kind of going back to just like taking my time, like I'm not really rushing. Like I just want to learn. Like, what does the editing process look like? What does the peer review process look like? A couple of weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, I actually sat in on a really great workshop that my institution hosted, where she's a consultant, she has a PhD, and maybe a PhD in communications, I can't remember, but she helps people write, and in particular books. And she kind of walked through this whole process of like how you write a book proposal and how you can get publishers involved and engaged and all of those things. And she also kind of walked you through like, well, what is your goal? Is your goal financial success? Is your goal promotion? Is your goal that you just want to write a book? You just want to say that, hey, I did this. There are a lot of different reasons for doing things, and you can fall into multiple buckets. But one thing that I learned from that workshop is that it takes time. Like, you think it's going to take a year, it's probably going to take closer to 3 years. And so I think that's why I don't really have so much of a time on it, because I am in this stage of just like really learning not only just like the logistics of like, how do you actually do this? How do you write a book? How do you go from like having these thoughts in your brain to putting it on paper and then sharing it in a way that somebody actually cares about it, right? So that they can be willing to publish it. But I'm also just like still in a place of just discovering like who I am as an educator, who I am as a researcher, and who I hope to be in the future. I am still learning just the things that I'm interested in, like what would I want to write about? And right now it's a question mark.
Yeah.
But I think in the next couple of years, I'll have a better idea. And this is kind of, I guess, holding myself accountable that like when I do get that idea, that I'm actually going to pursue it and not overthink. Because I can get to that point sometimes of like overthinking to the point where you don't even start.
Analysis paralysis.
Yes.
I've been there.
And it's a part of the process. And so it's not so much like it should deter you. Really, if you recognize that is part of the process, like you'll keep going, you'll keep pursuing what you want to do.
Yeah. I resonate with what you're saying, because although my brother and I kind of started writing the book and we got several chapters under our belt, we hit a point where it's like, okay, what next? Like we got our characters and those first few chapters were just like, it just felt like, the way I describe it is I was writing where my main character was going, and is almost like in my brain was a movie playing, and I was just like writing what I saw, almost like a vision.
Yeah.
And it was crazy. But then like after he went there and then there and then there with the group of people he was with, it's like, okay, now what? Like I need to add, you can't just go from A to B to C and then move books over. Like you have to, there's so much depth with fiction writing that you have to like writer's block, maybe, I don't know. But I went through the same thing where it's like, this will take us a year. And it's like, maybe this will take us like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Because you are building like a whole world, and you're adding backstories to characters. And it's a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
But so is writing something practical about like the things you've experienced in the workplace and in education and in healthcare. we can get ideas and like a spark of passion, and it's okay that we don't execute it within a 6-month time window.
Yes.
It's okay that passion, that spark that hits, maybe that doesn't come to fruition for 5 years or 10 years. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. I'm writing a paper right now that I told myself it'd take me a month or 2 months. And I'm like, month 6 of trying to write it. And I finally finished it and sent it to, I was able to get some funding to like have somebody, like a writing coach, like somebody like go through line by line and edit in different ways and provide suggestions and whatnot. And I was able to finish it, send it to that person. They've actually already sent it back to me, so that I can now go through and like incorporate edits and whatnot. And so there's always a next step. Like even when you think you're done, like, okay, there's a little bit more that you have to do until you can kind of come up with that final product. And that's why I like that book that I mentioned, Becoming the Writer That You Already Are, because I think there's also an element of, this could fail. So as I was going through writing this particular paper that I'm writing, on some research that I did over the last year and a half, I was writing the paper, and there's so much like criteria that you need to meet when you're trying to write for a journal or submit a paper to a journal in the academic medicine world. And so these journals kind of they lay out all the guidelines, and you have to like meet them to a T. Like if you have one grammatical error or you don't do the heading the way that they ask you to, they'll throw your paper out. Like all this work that you did, you made one little mistake and they'll throw your paper out. And so it's pretty like, hardcore, like trying to make sure that you've like crossed all your T's and dotted all your I's. And I remember I had stumbled on this paper that the editor wrote for this journal that I'm submitting my paper to, and he basically wrote this article saying, tips to getting published in this journal. And one of the first things that he said in his first paragraph was, under 20% of papers submitted to our journal get accepted. And he listed out the reasons why and gave tips to kind of avoid those mistakes. And I read that, and it was so helpful. Very appreciative to that editor for writing that. But I read it and I freaked out. And I was
did you have like all that stuff in your paper? Is that why? Like
no,
you thought you had it?
It was more so like the two biggest things they mentioned were like grammar and syntax and like not really meeting the aims and scope of the paper. And so I knew like, all right, this paper is perfect for this journal. So I met that. And then, I'm having all these people review it. I'm having like an actual writing coach like review it. Like I know I'm going to have the grammar and the syntax together. So I wasn't concerned about those things. I think it was just the probability that I might fail. If under 20% of papers get accepted to this journal, I am more likely to fail and be one of those, in the greater than 80% that don't get accepted.
Statistically, you're right.
And so that is what kind of like deterred me a little bit. Like I took like 2 weeks off from writing. I was like, I can't do this. Like, why did I choose this journal? And I could very easily, even now, I could still, kind of change things around and submit to a different journal. But I want to submit to this journal. And I'm okay if I fail, because after reading their little kind of tips, I realized like you really care. Like this journal really cares about the work that they put out, which is why they're so strict, which is why they have this criteria. And it also, what I gathered, at least reading the paper, is that they're going to give you some really good like constructive criticism and feedback that I think will help me to be a better writer. Even if I don't get published in this journal, it's going to make me a better writer. It's going to make my work better. And I'm okay with, it not working out the way that I wanted to.
What did you write the paper about?
My paper was about well-being and how that intersects with lifestyle. Just your lifestyle habits, how you eat, how you sleep, how you interact with other people, physical activity, avoiding risky substances. And I am missing a pillar. It's the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine. I'm missing a pillar, and I'm blanking on the 6th one. But in either case, I looked at how those 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine, how that actually impacts well-being for faculty members at my institution. And I was able to find that the more that faculty did lifestyle and incorporated healthy lifestyle behaviors in their day-to-day lives, whether it be personally or at work, they were actually more likely to feel fulfilled in the work that they do. They were less likely to feel burnt out, and they were also more productive at work. So they were able to be more efficient and get things done. Just be better providers, be better educators. And so that is the work that I am now trying to write up and share with whoever will read it. That just goes back to what I was saying earlier of like when I was on the clinical side, I was dealing with all these things, but I think a big part of what I was dealing with was just the burnout that kind of came from being in that stressful environment. And that kind of got me into this well-being space. Like, what does well-being look like at work? And then how does that intersect and impact, your personal life as well? Because if you're not well at work, there's a possibility that you're not well at home just because it's so hard to compartmentalize those things. They cross over at some point. They meet at some point. And so that's how I got more into this kind of well-being space and what does this look like? What are some practical ways that I can promote my own well-being and just promote the well-being of people around me?
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on the podcast. You've definitely given me some thoughts worth holding on to. I want to ask you, what's one thing that you think you'll take away from today? Something that resonated with you that we talked about or discussed throughout our time together that you think you'll think a little bit longer than a passing moment when you leave here today?
I wish you had asked me this beforehand so I could come up with a really polished answer.
Well, the point is it reflects something in the past 2 hours.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's no, I guess, prep time for this question. It's like a spur of the moment.
Yeah.
What resonated with you the most?
I think what resonated me was just our conversation on creativity. I feel like I'm starting to learn more and more about how people have all these dreams and they have all these ideas. And I think we sometimes get stuck. There are a lot of reasons why we may get stuck. Maybe we don't feel like we're good enough or we're worthy, or we feel like other people won't care. The list goes on. But I think the most important thing is that we are created beings and we are made to be creative. And that can look like a lot of different things, but we should, share our ideas. And we should, put in the work to really, I guess, demonstrate, what this could look like. Because I feel like that's how, greatness is made. Essentially, that's how the legends are made, because they had this crazy idea, right?
You're right.
This crazy thought. But then, look at where it brought us, we have electricity and we have all these really cool things because someone had an idea. And so I think it just reminds me that even in those tough moments, you have the writer's block, you're having a hard time figuring out how can I get all this to flow and come together. Like, it's worth going through that challenge because that end product is going to be so amazing. For someone, it may be small scale, maybe big scale, but at the end of the day, it's going to be impactful and it's worth pursuing.
Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that you can be notified every week when we launch new episodes. I'll see you then.